G'day, I'm Tim McIntyre. This is my visualization project. So I'm going to do a video, talk a little bit about what I've done, show it off, and present this as a sort of research presentation. So I'm looking at racing data in Brisbane for 2023. That's me many moons ago now. So the basics of what you need to know to understand what I'm going to talk about is that Brisbane has two race courses, Eagle Farm and Doomben. They were managed by different racing bodies that in 2009 merged to become the Brisbane Racing Club, who now conducts all the racing in Brisbane. Tracks are right next to each other. Fun fact. So jockeys are the people that ride the horses in the race, and trainers are the people that prepare the horses and get them ready to run as good as possible in the race. So this data came from the Racing Queensland website. I wrote a web scraper in Rust and then stored the information into an SQL database so that I could query against certain results. But the pages look like this. The information about the race is at the top. So the distance it's ran at and the grade it's ran at. So this was a 1,835 meter race, ran at a benchmark 90 with the prize money structures there. So it was $85,000 in total with 48,800 for the winner and so on. Below is now a detailed race recap. So the name of the horse, the trainer, the jockey, and then more information about barriers, weights, times, and starting price. So here we go. A year in review, 2023 Brisbane Racing. A goal of this is to provide insight into how racing is conducted in Brisbane, see who has the most success, and then analyze the effect of interstate industry participants. Here it is. This is every race ran in Brisbane for the calendar year 2023. So color, the light gray is Doomben, the darker gray is Eagle Farm, and the size of the dot is the amount of prize money for that race. So going up, we see distance, and across is the date that the race was run on. We see some really cool things. First, there was one 3,200 meter race in Brisbane. There's only 4 in Australia. So one of them, that's that dot right at the top. We can also see through May to July is where the big prize money races are. This is Brisbane's Winter Carnival, or the Star Stradbroke season, as it's officially called. The other really cool thing we see on this graph is in January, there's not much racing in Brisbane. That's because the Gold Coast has an equally big carnival with a bunch of big money races, which draws the industry participants that way. So split between the two tracks is pretty even. For number of races, Doomben has a slight edge, but as we saw previously, for prize money, Eagle Farm has those big money races, which we'll see a little bit later. Now the weather. Queensland's a sunshine state. So racing has a scale from a good 3, which is the driest track and not a lot of rain, to a heavy 8, which is a lot of rain. If it goes over that scale, that's when they start to get called off. So as we can see, a lot of the racing in Brisbane for the year 2023 was on really dry tracks, except for where my head is. We can see a little bit of rain around the end of November, start of December, and a little bit there in April as well. So for distances, we can look at how many races were run over each individual distance at each track and also see prize money. So at the top there, we can see a lot of the racing is conducted between the 1,200 and 1,600 meter groups. So a distinction here is that these are distance groups. So we saw in my first slide that it was an 1,835 meter race. I've just rounded them to the nearest 100. So all of these data is collected on distance groups as opposed to having 90 different categories that we can speak about. So once again, 1,200 to 1,600 meters is where a lot of the racing is, and it's also where a lot of the prize money is as well. But as we step out over the 2,000 meter range, we see that there's less racing, but a disproportionate amount of prize money. And we'll see that as well in the following heat maps, is that a lot of the prize money is pushed up towards the shorter ranges. But as we step out further on the average prize money, there's more money per race over 2,000 meters. This trend holds across both tracks as well, as you can see on these heat maps that make the distinction on track as well. So this prize money disparity happens because of the racing grades. Now, racing is done over different grades and different classes of racing. So these two weight for age and open races, there was one each. The open race, I think, was misclassified on the website, but I couldn't find a reason to change it. So it sort of stays there. Set weights and NMWs are this lower category of racing that happens in very special circumstances. And then most of the racing happens in quality handicaps, maidens, class racing, and benchmarks. So they're just different ways of saying how good each horse in each race is. A maiden race is for horses that haven't won a race before. And then once they win one, they either go down a class or a benchmark scale, with quality handicaps and group enlisted being the cream of the crop as they're rising to the best races in the state and the best races in Brisbane. So as we can see, as we move up the scale of quality of race, the total prize money goes up as well, with group enlisted races being the smallest category, as opposed to ignoring NMW and set weights, but having the most amount of prize money. We can also see that the prize money is more at Eagle Farm than it is at Doomben. So this general theme of amount of prize money being proportionate to the class of race happens within these categories as well. So this is our class rating scale. And as we can see on the right, that as you go up in the scale, the average prize money goes up as well, to where a class 6 has around $80,000 per race. This happens in our benchmark scale as well. So from 65 to 90, with average prize money going up as we get into higher rated benchmark races. So finally, our group enlisted scale, with group 1 being the best and listed being the worst rated races, that there are a lot less group 1 races, but on average, a group 1 race is worth $1.2 million. And on the left here as well, we can see that most of this racing happens at Eagle Farm. So now when we go to look at the jockeys and look at this jockey success, the first thing we can look at is wins, which is at the top, and then also include placings, so second and third podium finishes. So we can see that Brisbane's best jockeys are probably James Orman and Ben Thompson, and then there's a big taper off towards the end. So jockeys generally have a pretty even split across both tracks. There doesn't seem to be anyone that performed great at one track opposed to the other. But now if we start to look at prize money distribution as well, we can see it here with this being the total prize money for racing in 2023 by area, and then each jockey space within it shows their proportional split. Now we see some interesting things happen. Sam Clipperton has a 4.5% share of prize money, but he only ran in 12 races for 2 wins and a third. Now next to him, Kyle Wilson-Taylor, very similar amount of prize money, 297 races with 27 wins. Right? We can show this relationship by graphing prize money as well as amount of wins. We start to see a few jockeys coming up with being in the top 25 for prize money total, but not having as many wins. Right? So these are our interstate participants. The best jockeys in the country coming from Sydney and Melbourne, coming up for a carnival and winning big money races. So we can see that here as well. As we stretch out towards the top, these are our consistent Brisbane jockeys, whereas this cluster led by Sam Clipperton at the top, but then the country's best, James McDonald's and Nash Willer, being in this cluster of interstate raiders. Now we spoke about before as higher grades having higher money. You can see that on this heat map with the interstate participants being the jockeys that don't have many races in our maiden, class, and benchmark scale, whereas our consistent Brisbane jockeys being those ones popping up hot on the heat map. So as you can see, Sam Clipperton, 12 races, all in group and listed quality. Now we can see the same parallels across the trainers. So Tony Gollan being Brisbane's by far best trainer, having the biggest share of prize money here. But then we can see our man Joe Pride down the bottom trained the horses at Sam Clipperton Road. So you see him having a disproportionate amount of prize money compared to his participation in total amount of racing. So there's Joe Pride as well, 2 wins and a third, so 3 places for the 4th most prize money out of Brisbane's trainers. You can also see notable mention on this map is Clayton Douglas. He had 1 runner, 1 win, and he comes up, I think, 20th in total prize money. So here we are again. We can see this cluster of interstate trainers down the bottom, led by Joe Pride. And then as we stretch out, we see Brisbane's consistent trainers led up the top by Tony Gollan. The same parallel here is where you can see Brisbane's consistent trainers really hot on the map with maidens, class, and benchmarks, whereas our interstate raiders are coming up and winning in group and listed quality. That's the end of the communication part. I know this was a bit of a longer video, so I'll break it up and come back and talk about design in a second part. Thank you.